Items for consideration and action.
Jerry, your microphone isn't on.
Pardon me?
Your microphone isn't on.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Yes, your microphone isn't on, Jerry.
That's why they can't hear you. You gotta turn it up way loud.
Okay, consent. Well, I'd like to, first of all, talk about the minutes from last meeting.
And I've got some, at least one correction.
Okay?
Ken, can I borrow
Yes.
your copy? On item number, excuse me. Okay, item number 4, my comments, bullet number 2, the city should not allow much greater development. It was specifically addressing the issue of the opportunity study, that I said the opportunity study should not be looked at because that has a major impact on traffic and circulation. So it was not a blanket against projects in the downtown. It was specifically with regard to the opportunity study until we address those traffic concerns. So that's my correction.
Any other changes, comments? Really?
Well, I was going to make a motion if they're bearing no more other items to be corrected, that we approve the consent calendar. Oh, but is it possible to turn the sound down? Because it's...
He'll hear you say that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a correction to item 2, last bullet, which is on page 4 of 5. And the last bullet on number 2 was investigate a continuous sidewalk on this project vis-a-vis condition number 12. We omitted that reference. So we want to add a reference to condition 12 on that bullet.
Cool. Okay. Want to continue?
Well, I made the motion. Given those 2 changes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Do I hear a
Second that.
Minutes as amended.
All in favor?
Well, they're on the...
Aye.
Yep.
Well, it's not the minutes, right? It's the...
Minutes
Is it
as
minutes?
amended.
Yeah,
It's the
The
minute.
minutes as amended, okay.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so we have 2 discussion items, and as suggested by staff, and I definitely agree, we have the same project engineer discussing them, and if you've looked at this project, they are interrelated, so why don't we discuss them both at the same time? I think it'll make it easy for you, for one. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioners. We'll be discussing First and Main intersection as in related to the traffic signal timing at the intersection, how it's coordinated with Foothill Expressway, and the turning movements at the intersection. I'll add on to the discussion regarding the county expressway plan, how the operations of the coordination along Foothill, and discuss the next steps for the county expressway plan. You should have a copy of an email from a resident regarding some of the topics that are of interest for First and Main. I think this would be a good segue on how we can dive into our discussion. So if you look at the handout you have here, we have topics regarding traffic signal logic, the left turn from southbound First to eastbound Main, signal control on First Street, pedestrian crossing timings, and the right turn movement from southbound First to westbound Main. So I'll take this one in order and address these topics here. So I'll go ahead and read the issue, and I'll have a response for that. Any question? No. Any change to traffic signal logic has to include Foothill signals since they are the gatekeepers for First and Main. Short distance between First and Main and Foothill is a bottleneck for traffic. Capacity for eastbound Main is 8 to 10 cars on westbound Main. Traffic signal logic design must keep traffic flowing through the short bottleneck. Traffic streetscape provided synchronization between both sets of signals, and logic appears to be programmed to allow for green lights for eastbound Main across Foothill and First. This logic is good in the AM and PM commute hours and is not needed during midday because of low volume of traffic. What is needed is midday synchronization of southbound foothill left turn to eastbound Main. Often midday lunch traffic will back up onto foothill, both foothill left and right turns to eastbound Main. Traffic signal logic should be programmed to activate synchronized signal foothill between foothill left turn and eastbound Main at pre-selected times. So I'm familiar with the county's coordination technology and plans for all of Foothill. So they run a traffic responsive demand type of signal coordination. Earlier types of signal coordination was time-based. We often understand that peak traffic in the mornings between 6 and 8 roughly, or 6 and 9 roughly, and PM is roughly between 4 and 6. Traditionally, you would do time-based coordination and have the controller program between these two times run this plan because we know the traffic is a certain pattern. The county runs this traffic responsive demand where they have a threshold for volume or movement, and they have 20 plans per intersection. So depending if the threshold is met volume-wise, a particular plan will be implemented during that time, and it's not time-based. It could be 10:30 in the morning, and if there's a sudden surge in traffic for a particular direction, the coordination plan will kick in. So it's not. So for lunchtime, if there's an event downtown that draws a lot of people to the downtown, if the volume thresholds are met, then the coordination plan will kick in. If there's no coordination, the signal operations run, we call free timing. It's first come, first served type of signal operation. There's minimum times for pedestrian crossings, yellow times and red times, and there's green time allocated to each movement, and signals will time out and serve another direction depending if a car is present or not. But typically, there's some sort of coordination running throughout the whole day, depending on the volume thresholds. It only typically runs free when it's really evening hours, or if there's traffic's really, really low, and it'll run a free timing pattern. Let's see.
Can I ask a question, Cedric?
Sure.
You want to go? So what I hear you saying is that the Foothill Expressway lights are all programmed by the county, and they have 20 different plans, et cetera. I think what this is talking about is that coordination with First Street.
Exactly. So whenever Foothill and Main gets coordinated, Main and First gets coordinated automatically. Because the signalized intersections directly adjacent to Foothill Expressway are coordinated with the county. So anytime the expressway is coordinated, the adjacent ones get coordinated automatically.
But Cedric, the problem, and it's identified here, and I mean, it occurred to me a long time ago, is that left turns off of First Street are terrible in both directions, and they're going to get worse. So what we need at First and Main is a light that has a protected left turn, because if we don't do that, there's going to be a traffic jam, and it'll back up when Safeway is in operation. It'll back up all the way down First Street, guaranteed.
To have a protected left turn, you need 8 vehicle phases, and you need lane space for 8 vehicle phases. We don't have that in every direction.
And so we're just going to throw up our hands and say, okay, we have a traffic problem.
Well, when you have coordination, it allows better flow through the intersection. But as far as
First and Main doesn't. That particular direction for left turns does not have anything to do with Foothill. If you're going eastbound on First Street and you want to turn north on Main Street, that doesn't have anything to do with Foothill. And if a pedestrian is in the crosswalk, you will back up all the cars through multiple cycles until eventually some car gets through. And I've seen it happen. And as soon as the building at First and Main gets built and Safeway gets built, it's going to be a disaster.
one thing that we can do is split, what we call split phasing, where we would run each direction separately.
Right. Each direction can have its own set of cycles. So in effect, the cars will have to wait through a cycle, but at least the left turns will be protected. And so they can, and that can be coordinated.
Well, there's because there's no separate left turn lane, it'll be still a permissive left turn.
But you could have, for example, only eastbound
Exactly.
on First Street,
Right.
that can be one cycle, one phase.
Exactly.
And that you can either go straight ahead or you can turn left, and everybody else has to
Yes,
stop
that's
while
true.
those
Yes,
people are taking.
that's true.
I think
And the
that's-
next
is
thing
that what
would
you're
be
saying?
westbound on First Street. Those people can turn left, and it could be all coordinated with Foothill.
It would affect the signal timing of the coordination, and I'd have to talk to the county, but I should have prefaced it with the county operates that intersection, so any changes that we would recommend, we'd have to run by the county to make sure it fits their coordination plan.
But do you think this will work?
I can talk to the county and see if they can run models to see if it works.
Because, I mean, no offense, none of us is traffic engineers up here, but we all acknowledge there's a
Some
problem.
of us are rocket scientists.
I know, but that's not the same thing.
Some of us aren't.
And some of us are brain surgeons, but nonetheless. But it would be interesting, since this isn't an idea, if it I mean, we are seeing a problem, and the classic one of having an extra lane and having a left turn hour, we don't have that choice. So,
We used to have that.
but we don't have it now. And so the thing is, what can we do that's the next best thing? And if it takes a little longer to get through, but it keeps things moving in an orderly manner, if you come up with another idea, that would be great. If the county is willing to run models, because I don't think they would deny that we have a problem and it's going to get worse. So then it's to their interest as well.
I can definitely talk to the county and see if that it could be
And it's called split phasing?
split phasing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My concern is exactly what's been said, is that both the 400 Main Street building and the Safeway building exit onto First Street and State. And if people turn right because they want to go to Main Street, that's all going to jam up, which means that parking lot's going to jam up, which means nobody can get out of there, and they've got to wait for the stop sign. I don't think there are plans to put a stoplight in.
It's going to be crazy. It's already noticeable right now, although workable. But it's going to get really bad. And, I mean, I get comments from people about traffic in Los Altos, and my answer is, hey, you want a more vibrant downtown, got to pay for it with traffic. So, but at some point, if it becomes gridlock due to the way the streets are designed or the signals are phased, it's going to become there's going to be a much more vocal response, I think. So it's better we look at it now and see if we can deal with the county. And for example, the part about having everything phased with the expressway, I mean, that makes perfect sense. But they have to play ball with us a little bit so that the traffic in downtown can be handled.
I completely understand. We have to make sure, I have to work with the county to make sure that the phasing we come up with can also work with them back and forth.
Sure.
Right, but there's still a fundamental problem. And for those of us who attended the expressway meeting, in their view of the world at the county, all they care about is moving traffic along Foothill. They don't even think about what backs up on the major cross streets that intersect with Foothill. And so we can make it better, but until there's some sort of more sophisticated coordination between the traffic lights and the flows on Foothill, the traffic lights and the flows on San Antonio, Main Street, and Edith, we're going to have a problem, because they're only, all they care about is moving
Their
the
priority, let's say their only, their priority is
moving-
Foothill
Is
Expressway.
Foothill Express. But it was very clear, they didn't even think about what was happening to the traffic
Well, yeah.
at any of those intersections. And so I think the model that's being used is fundamentally broken, because there needs to be the same kind of flow measurement and timing at all of our intersections as well to address the flow.
Well, and actually, Cedric,
Yes.
this came up at the county meeting, where we pointed out that our town really has the most crossings across Foothill in a very short period, very short distance. And that's why we take the hit more than other towns do, because the intersections are much more spread out.
And our downtown is right next to
And the
it.
downtowns are right next to it. So I think that you have good ammunition to go to the county and say, look, we're in an unusual situation relative to Foothill Expressway, and we need your help, and here's what we see, because all we can do is work with them. If we go in with a chip, we're going to get nothing.
Right,
But we all know there's a problem. The question is our problem going to reach a threshold of priority for them? And the answer in my mind is it will if it doesn't affect their overall plan for what they want to do for Foothill, and that's why the modeling will really be important.
Yes. I talk to the county probably 3 times a week regarding signal timing on Foothill. And I talked to their senior traffic engineer the other day, and he made some timing adjustments regarding some of the issues I had with the signal timing implemented this afternoon. So
They're
maybe
being
by
responsive.
next week you can see some changes according to their criteria. It's working good, but I haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet. They made some timing adjustments to allow for more green time.
Well,
So-
and the thing I've noticed is since they've blocked off First Street because they've got a lot of construction going on, and nobody's making that left there,
Yeah.
it's actually helping because everyone has to go straight now. I mean, I've almost thought, what about making First Street a one-way street from that little stretch so that nobody comes down that street? You could create another lane, essentially. You could have a left turn and a straight, and then the oncoming traffic coming the other way would have to go left or right.
Once
But-
again, we are not traffic engineers.
I know we're not. I'm
There's
just
a lot of
looking at-
unintended consequence in that idea.
But I can tell you that I live on the Springer Rancho corner, and although it's not the same as what we face here, it's a very complicated situation. And I have to tell you that the county has done, I think, a noteworthy job of keeping that traffic going. So I say that because if they looked at that complicated corner the way that they did to make the best of the situation, I have to think that they're going to listen to you when you tell them what's going on with.
Yeah, the only real difference between that intersection and Main is the amount of pedestrians. That's the real kicker for the difference. But jumping on Springer Road, I don't know if this was explained to the PAB or brought up when some of your commission members were at the PAB meeting last week. The level of service at Springer Magdalena Foothills LOSE right now. And the one issue that the county brought up to me was the stop sign at Springer and Berry. The unintended consequence of that stop sign there, it causes the signals at Foothill to time out.
Right.
Because the signal thinks there's no cars coming because the stop sign is holding them up. So one thing they asked me to determine or to think about was, should we signalize Berry, Springer, or remove the stop signs? And initially, and I still feel this way, to not remove the stop signs. Otherwise, the residents on Berry cannot get out.
That's right.
And I happen to be one of those, and I will be a protesting maniac if you do
Yeah.
that.
No, I'm
what
not
about the
considering
light?
that.
What about putting a light in there?
That's, if you
And
signalize.
it's also a school, I mean, there's a
Yeah.
school
Yeah,
right
but then
there.
there
It would be
are three-
ludicrous.
But a
Signals
signalized
so close
would be
by.
better.
Signalized would allow coordination between the two signals. It would keep the greens together so they can pass through.
So
Well, it's
people-
actually 3 signals. It's
Yeah,
Foothill.
the 3 signals.
Yeah.
Right, but it might be something to think if, traffic signals are a hot button in town, and I would think that a traffic signal that was, flashing red in the non-peak hours and only signalized, only red, yellow, green, during peak hours might be a more acceptable
not a bad idea.
solution.
That is one type of operation that can be considered. We would have to, just for formality's sake, to run a signal warrant analysis to make sure it's actually needed. According to the county, when they did travel time studies of the expressways plus the side streets, it took them 6 minutes to get from Berry, Springer, through Foothill.
Wow.
Hey, it takes me that long to get up El Monte, crossing Foothill, since we've had that. Foothill moves really nicely now, but everybody on the other side, on the north side of El Monte, can't get out. It's 3 signals in the morning minimum.
So, as you know, El Monte Foothill is level service F, which runs an 83-second delay.
Yeah, knew that.
Springer Magdalena Foothill is 66-second delay, level service E, and Foothill San Antonio is 79 seconds with
Whoa.
E minus. So the coordination on Foothill Expressway is controlled by El Monte because that eats up most of the signal cycle. So everything else is almost half cycle time based off of El Monte. So, and unfortunately, because El Monte controls Foothill, it controls San Antonio, it controls Maine, it therefore controls First and Main.
It's a cascade.
Yeah. So the operation, right now, the green times are balanced for every direction at El Monte Foothill. If I take time from Foothill to give El Monte, Foothill suffers and everything else suffers behind it. So right now, the greens are pretty much balanced. So every phase, direction has pretty much the same green time. And they're at that limit right now where nothing else can be done to improve operations unless we add capacity.
So I have a question on San Antonio,
Yes.
especially between 8 to 8:30 and then 3 to 3:30. The light on San Antonio and First is
First.
80 to 90% of the time red, while the light on Foothill and San Antonio is green. And in the morning when you're going, because I go to drop my daughters on that side,
Yeah.
we're just standing, you're like,
Yeah.
it's going to close, and then there's nobody there. It's green. And as soon as we get green, that turns red.
Yeah. So
So
I'm glad you
those
brought,
two, if we can.
No, they do it just for you.
I'm glad you brought that up, Commissioner. During monthly maintenance of our signals, I and my contractor, we found a faulty coordination issue
Okay.
between Foothill and that intersection. So the outputs between the two intersections, or the way they talk to each other, there's a cut somewhere.
Got it.
So right now, I'm working with my contractor to fabricate a new piece of equipment to fix that.
That makes me feel
Yeah.
much better.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Good find.
I have to say that I spend a lot of time in downtown. I have breakfast here, because I have my office here, and so I got a lot of people that talk to me about what's going on. And the most, and I think you must get it too, the most controversial question I get is what we're discussing now on Main and Foothill, turning left. I get that. What are we going to do? It's only going to get worse, and I'm sure you must get it too, Ken, because it's the same thing.
Well, I saw that back when we first started approving those buildings, and then when they narrowed First Street, I realized it was just going to be terrible. I actually wrote an article about it for a newsletter. We just have to do something.
We're limited.
Well,
No.
but Cedric has an idea.
Cedric
we have
has
an
some
idea.
ideas, and Cedric
And
can
he
talk
knows
to
what the
county.
problem is.
There's
and-
another idea that I floated to the county is a pedestrian-only phase,
Ooh.
which is
Say again?
pedestrian-only phase. So if you're familiar with the operation right now, the vehicle or the pedestrians go with the same direction as the vehicle. In a pedestrian-only phase, all the directions go at the same time. All pedestrians go at the same
Why
time.
not do that? That's a great idea.
So I'm working with the county to see if they're be willing to implement that. So it's something I have to work on with them.
I wasn't aware that of the importance of the El Monte Expressway intersection, but that you can wait through multiple cycles before. I know you're saying it's level F, but
Yeah.
I think it's like level N or something.
Z.
It's level S for sucks. it's really bad.
But
And
Ken, it's when they changed the lanes because
Phoebe,
they.
I know why it's bad. That's not the problem. One of the problems is that the light that's at
Covington.
Giffen or / Covington and El Monte doesn't coordinate properly with the Foothill Expressway light. So what happens is that light doesn't. The cars get hung up trying to get onto the expressway or turn left. And in the meantime, the people are backed up. Actually, they're backed up all the way through Hawthorne. So it not only backs up at that light, then at one block down, there's a stop light, or a stop sign, that's at Hawthorne, or at, pardon me,
No, Quest?
Cuesta, sorry, that's a
Cuesta's a
light.
light.
That's a light. And then sometimes it'll back up even farther, all the way down to Hawthorne. I mean, it is really backed up.
I'm glad you brought the intersection of Covington and Giffen up. We also discovered a problem there too. There's a traffic loop detection issue there. Whenever there's a detection issue or malfunction, the signal goes into a recall timing pattern, a set timing pattern that's considered safe. So when that happens, it throws itself out of coordination with the
Yeah.
adjacent signal. So we're in a process of fixing that as well.
Where have you been all this time?
So
But I think the thing that's interesting is that when they changed the lanes, what it made is Foothill moves like a dream, because that's where the extra lane went. And that
Of course.
goes back to Cedric's point, which is the focus at that discussion of that intersection was, how can we keep Foothill moving? And they did a great job at the sacrifice of everybody who lives on the north end of El Monte heading back towards El Camino.
Right. But if he's found two coordination problems, one at San Antonio and one at El Monte with the subsidiary lights, that's fantastic. I mean,
And that's huge.
those are
Make it.
major.
Yeah.
And people block the intersections. Of course, that's the problem you probably have no control over either. But I mean, that of course blocks everybody. Once the people going up San Antonio
Yeah.
fill up the First Street or Cuesta intersection, then the Cuesta people
Then can't get
out.
by, yeah.
Right, but
Yeah.
my concern is that, the El Monte problem has been going on for at least 6 years,
Yeah,
and
that-
if not longer.
Yeah, but it may have been that miscoordination problem that he discovered, that may have been there all along. And they,
well.
I mean,
Well, the other thing that it points out, and it's good to know this, is 6 or 7 years ago when El Monte was changed, it was in reaction to a movement to discourage people from commuting on El Monte from El Camino to 280. It was meant to make it less desirable as a commute route, and it works. If you ever take that route, you try to not ever take it again. It's the hardest way to
except for those of us that happen to live there. And then we can't escape our,
Right, right. But it's, the term unintended consequences. When you limit this movement, or you limit through traffic here, or
Yeah.
you bottle this up, and then, it's going to go somewhere. And so
Right.
you have these.
I go by John's house.
And that's
And
what John
and
is
actually,
saying.
that's what happens. We get cut through traffic through the residential streets.
But I have to say, honestly, this meeting, it makes me feel much better because we keep talking about these things, but it looks like they're literally on top of it.
I have a couple questions. The first is, how long does it take to solve the kind of problems that you've identified?
the
The
equipment problems?
malfunctions. And the second part, you can answer them both at the same time, is how is there a process for discovering these problems, or is it that we need to be soliciting, opinions from people about the biggest issues, and then you kind of delve into those areas and try to uncover?
So we recently changed maintenance contractors within the last few months, and I gave them a checklist of things to check every month, every quarter, every 6 months, every year. Big ticket items all the way down to make sure the knobs are turning. What they discovered was actually on a monthly checklist.
Very cool.
So the traffic loops in the ground, they're magnetic, so they can meg the loops to determine the ohms on the loops. And they have certain thresholds to make sure that if it's not meeting the criteria, it's a bad loop. Let's change it out. So that happens to be the one over at Covington.
There's a bad loop.
Bad loop. So whenever there's a bad loop, it triggers it into a recall timing pattern. For the San Antonio first, that one was resident complaint driven. So understanding that there is coordination on the county side with our signal, I asked the county to see if they can pick up coordination through their software system. They were able to pick it up intermittently, so that told me that there's something wrong with the communication device between both signals. So I had my technician with the county's technician be on either end of the system and then try and find each other through their equipment, and they couldn't. So they found a faulty piece of equipment. But unfortunately, because our cabin is a little bit older, we cannot buy it off the shelf anymore. We have to literally manufacture it. So my contractor right now is trying to manufacture that piece of equipment to make sure it fits and it works properly. So right now they're in the beta testing phase of that piece of equipment. I don't want to put it out there unless it's really working.
Cool.
Is this a capital improvement item that should be something brought up as sort of long-term for the city to review? If our systems are outdated to the level that your guys are making the equipment because we can't buy it off the shelf, and there's clearly a better technology because the county is using it.
Well, my signal contractor, part of my criteria for the signal contractor is to inventory all the pieces of equipment throughout the city, date them, and identify which ones are approaching end of life. I have that for every intersection, and it's going to help me, as CIP comes up, to advocate for a new signal or a new traffic control signal. I am currently looking into traffic cameras for all our city signals. We have a new one over at Homestead and Foothill Crossings, where I'm able to put a hard drive and I can manipulate the vehicle detection, and I can monitor traffic.
By the way, I think that intersection's working a lot better. I like it a lot better now.
There is one issue, which is the left turn from Foothill onto Homestead in the evening. It's not any other time, but it's in the evening. It's backing up into Foothill.
So that intersection is going to be coordinated with the Foothills also.
Okay.
So as of today, the county has told me they're developing their coordination patterns for that, and they have 20 per intersection. So before they actually deploy it, they run the models to make sure it works fine. So they said by middle next week they have at least have the first 5 or 6 deployed.
To ask the question, Ronit, so if somebody had found, like, if somebody notices an issue,
Yeah.
what do they do? Do they call you
They
up?
typically call me, or they use the city website to
So go to the-
make a request, and then if I get a lot regarding the flashing crosswalks, and as soon as I get them, I log into Salesforce, which is my my contractor's way of tracking things. So I log in, I make my request, I ask to check it during the time of day, and they report back to me, and I authorize a change, or if there happens to be no problem, I'll get back to the resident saying, you just pushed the button hard enough, or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
So go to the city website, log the complaint.
Or if you have my number, you can call me directly,
Or if we see you here.
or come visit
Can
me.
David, can we schedule another meeting with Cedric so we can get his take on how these fixes are working? I mean, I think
Schedule a
in
follow-up.
the
4
6 or
months?
7 years I've been doing this is the first time we've ever heard from our traffic engineer and had some,
Well, now we're the PTC.
Well, what timeframe were you thinking for the next meeting?
whenever Cedric thinks.
Or
is-
as soon as I know when the fix is made, I can come back to the commission.
Can you send a note out to us so we can
Yeah.
sort of, I mean, I think that's the thing, right? If you make changes, we're the eyes on the street as well as most of the citizens, but we tend to watch and look and,
But if we have direct information from you, that's extremely valuable.
So basically, once you're satisfied that you've looked into it and you know how it's working, I think that's the time I think
Yeah.
we should come back.
And, tomorrow, we're actually fixing a loop over at Edith San Antonio. Because that one's also running on a recall.
Okay.
So tomorrow, we're making that fix. We've had to juggle between the rain and the traffic in downtown. So work around those things.
So I'm going to suggest that as you make the fixes, it would be really helpful if you or James or David send us an email and let us know when intersection is fixed, because we cover enough geography in this town, and I mean, I can tell you when Foothill and San Antonio isn't working, because I have traffic backing up to Hillview and I can't get out of my street. And I think we all see it because we're around town, and it would be helpful to know when the fix is in, because I think it'll help us understand, gee, it's gotten a little better, or all of a sudden it's gotten a lot better. I mean, because one of the challenges we have is there's more and more traffic coming and every day. And so, it's helpful to get that data point.
Well, I wonder if instead of doing an email, I mean, we're just talking about methodology here, if there was sort of a post that Cedric could do on the website. It would be, from your traffic engineer, smiley face, the following intersections are being worked on, the following intersections, we found a defect, we're working on it, so that's kind of like a status report, as if you have nothing else to do with your time, Cedric. But what I'm saying is, I don't think it needs to go to us per se.
Sure.
I think it needs to go out to the public to say that we know there are problems, and we're working on them, and you can have a little status, the loop at Edith and San Antonio was delayed because of rain, but we're working on it this week. And just a running commentary, and then we can check in the same way, because we have the empirical evidence of when we're going around, we'll know if an intersection's not working as it does. Malka was talking about when she has to take the kids to school. I mean, it's obvious when it's happening, but it may not be as obvious, because people are often very quick to complain and not so quick to give the good news. I think it'd be nice if we had the good news coming out. So, just a thought, because I think we just need a better system of information in and information out.
I also think it's important for us everyone to keep in mind that Silicon Valley is experiencing a real economic boom. I mean, it's changing dramatically. Whether you drive on the freeway, on 101, you drive down into San Jose or Santa Clara.
Traffic is crazy.
It's just everywhere, and I mean, that's a great problem to have in some ways, but it's really affecting Los Altos,
Sure.
and in a good way. I mean, I'm glad that the economics are improving in Los Altos, but we just have to be aware that we have to think ahead on these traffic solutions, because it's not going to go away. It's only going to get worse because the traffic is increasing dramatically. I mean, I ride my bike around a lot, and I can tell you that the traffic has just changed, even in the last year.
Any other questions of?
Well, I think Cedric was still going to go through
Yeah.
Jim
If I can just finish
Wing's,
this, and then we can-
document, and then I know Mr. Wing probably wants to have an opportunity in public comment, so.
So where are we here?
So
Pedestrian crossing time?
left turn southbound First and eastbound Main I'll go onto that. So again, I mentioned I was talking to the county regarding having a pedestrian-only phase to eliminate that conflict between the vehicle and the pedestrian. There was mention here about preventing a left turn, that left turn movement. I've seen other cities do that, but looking at the geography of our downtown, the next available left would be through the parking plaza or West Hawthorne, which it's really tight already, and I think there's too much interaction between pedestrian and parked vehicles that it might be an unintended consequence. The next available left turn would be Whitney Street. Now you're sort of kind of too far from the middle of downtown. So let me try and work with the county regarding split phasing or pedestrian-only phasing to see if that will be palatable to them.
The one thing I noticed, and maybe this is the loop, it's that as you come off Foothill, trying to make the left from Main to First, because that light has to wait, it's a left turn, right? You get the light to go left, but then it stays red, and everybody kind of lines up there, but once there's 4 or 5 cars, it blocks the other lane. And then you've got what situations? I know this is not quite that, but
Unfortunately, it's a function of the very short space in between. Again, I can talk to the county to see if they can make that left an immediate or
give it priority
The
of some
primary
sort.
phase is serving that intersection, but
Yeah.
there's also the problem with the other left turn from First now. So,
But what I'm thinking is if you're coming up Main Street towards Foothill, they don't need to go across necessarily until that light turns green, because they just queue up there. But then you back up into I know it's a complicated thing.
Yeah.
I'm not a traffic engineer, as Phoebe pointed out.
unfortunately, we don't have traffic cameras at First and Main to collect data like the county does. Since they do operate them, maybe we can. I'm in favor of traffic cameras. I came from a city, I implemented traffic cameras for data collection and coordination, so I can work with the county to see if they can put those in,
That'd be awesome.
especially this being a critical intersection. Okay. Demand signal control and first, I think we kind of already touched a lot on that already. The traffic loops are the county standard, and there are 3 sets of loops per direction and expands 50 feet from the stop bar out. And those are considered presence loops, and it determines the vehicle presence at the intersection. If you were to add any more, they are called advanced loops, and they're typically maybe 150 feet from the intersection. It's one standalone loop, and the function of that is whoever has a green right now, if a car passes that loop, it'll stay green until they pass that intersection. But those are typically used for higher volume streets and higher speed streets, where the criteria is to get traffic really flowing out of the area. They have that at Homestead right now. Pedestrian crossing times. The old standard used to be 4 feet per second. But now in 2009, the California METCD recommends 3.5 feet per second as the new standard in hopes to accommodate the older population in moving across the crosswalk. The county standard for the pedestrian initial, which is I'm standing at the intersection, I'm looking around, oh, I have a PED symbol, I'm going to start walking now. They give that person 7 seconds to react. And then once they get past 7 seconds, then that 3 foot per second cycle starts. And we have a pedestrian countdown telling the resident or the walker, you have 10 seconds left, 9 seconds left, and so on and so forth. The METCD allows agencies to bring that initial time down to 4 seconds if we have good justification. So if we feel the volume of traffic necessitates to bring that time down to 4 seconds, we can note that and put that in our timing plan, so that way we have justification for it. And then, let's see. And in this case, if we do implement a pedestrian-only phase, it would be, we can keep the 7 second minimum initial for the pedestrian, because everyone will have the same time now. We'll pick the longest crossing time and make that our standard. So even the people who cross the shorter parts will have enough time to cross the street. And the next topic is the right turn southbound first to westbound Main. So the curb return, I did some back checking regarding the design and the as-built of that particular corner of the intersection. It was designed for a 15-foot curb radius, and it was built at a 15-foot curb radius per the construction as-built. Most of downtown, State Street, where the new intersections were put in, are built to the same curb return standard. So that particular, we all know it's a tight turn, but it was designed for a large UPS or FedEx truck to make that turn. It does swing a little bit wide into the adjacent lane, but it cannot accommodate anything larger than that vehicle. I know right now there isn't a prohibitive right turn for anything larger than a UPS or FedEx truck, but I think we can reevaluate that after the construction is done, after traffic is settled, and if there's evidence of those large trucks still making that right turn, we can definitely put a prohibition for that turn. What would make it effective is if we reach out to the businesses to let them know, hey, what kind of truck do you have for deliveries? If you have this certain truck, can you please use this route? So that way we can proactively reach out to them and they can notify their delivery companies about what routes they should be taking.
I have a question about pedestrian only. So that's, I want to think of that as a fine-tuning layer, but in fact, that's something which would not be running 24/7. That would be during the times when we actually have pedestrians. I know it sounds silly, but I'm concerned.
Yes, so We have, pedestrian push buttons, though it would only be activated when someone activates the button.
No, but, so I'm thinking, at noontime, it's a different traffic pattern in town than if you go by at 9 o'clock at night. And so if there's, I don't see the necessity for having a pedestrian-only signal in the cycle if,
Yeah. That's a very good detailed question, and it's a matter of the traffic cabinet's configuration. So I have to work with the county to see if there's enough inputs and outputs to accommodate that type of operation.
And regarding the tighter radiuses downtown and in our other business districts, that was obviously a very conscious decision. It comes out of our circulation element update many years ago, the idea of slowing cars down and tightening the radiuses. Some of our older, 1960s, 70s radiuses are meant to facilitate fast cars, and these tighter radiuses are meant to control car speed and give pedestrian safety a higher priority. And we also don't expect, large 18-wheel trucks to be heading south on First and be making that right turn lane. The Safeway agreement specifically requires their trucks to come off of Foothill in San Antonio, go straight down First Street, and then go out on Eda. So that was never meant to be a route for those size of trucks. And then, of course, we also know with all the construction on First Street, you've got, cement trucks and other heavy equipment trucks that probably aren't being too careful on their routes and their movements. And so, as everybody has noted, it'd be better to evaluate that turning movement once those projects are completed.
Any other questions of staff?
thanks, Cedric, great job.
I can go on to the county expressway.
Oh, yes.
Well, should we have public comment
Public
on
comment.
that item,
Well, pardon me?
on number 2?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, yeah, but
In between, if you don't mind. So, James?
some water, please.
I'm Jim Wing, 11 Milverton Road. First of all, I really want to thank you for having this type of discussion. I think it helps you, and it helps Cedric, and certainly it'll, in the end run, it'll help we the people anyway. That some changes be made as best they can be made. And I certainly hope this will continue anyway, and maybe somewhat out of it, you will start to prioritize what things should be done and use that in your recommendation to council. Now, before I wrote my letter, when I listen to you, ideas are coming from all sides there. So when I wrote my letter, before I started, I said, what is the circulation strategy? Now I'm going to talk of First and Main. And in my opinion, is number one, keep Foothill and San Antonio flowing. Number two, discourage cars on Main and State. Number three, encourage cars to go a direct path to parking plaza. And so with that kind of in mind, that's where I started my comments. And that's why I made the recommendation of no left turn, to be southbound First over to eastbound Main. Again, here is, do we need those cars? And you look at the counts, and that's the low count turn there. When I take a look at the curb, and yes, I've had the discussion with staff, it's not the trucks that are a problem, it is the cars. And as a matter of fact, if you went and talked to Skips, you would find out it's been a nice bit of business to them, because it's the cars that are hopping that. Now keep in mind, you're turning from a 11-foot lane into a 10-foot lane. And when I measured that curb, that's where I came up with the 13-foot radius. Whatever the drawings say, they say, and that's maybe what it is. But regardless of exactly where it is, it's the going into that tight 10-foot lane, which is the through lane to go across or to make a right turn on the foothill. So it's cars that are the problem. And again here, my data for this was I did watch it very carefully about a year ago when we had streetscape done, Safeway open, and that little window of no construction. So that taught me a certain layer. And also, again, here the last week or so, in terms of kind of rechecking things. And by the way, Cedric just mentioned that the county made another change today, and actually it works. This is the first time I've ever seen sequencing of the left turn of southbound Foothill into, this case, eastbound Main. And it works. And the key thing with this interchange, it's that short section, I call it the buffer. This is between Main and Foothill. And all your light logic, what you really want to do is somehow clear that buffer. And if you notice that I talked about the 5 sensors on First Street, basically, I think you've got to count 5 cars, because if 5 cars are turning right into this buffer and 5 cars are turning left into this buffer, it's full. So therefore, you really start to work on a logic to where the, can you put, because once it fills up, then the interchange goes into gridlock. So again here, it may be best to try to keep that buffer unloaded and therefore gate the amount of cars within the reason to go into it. Because keep in mind, when those cars are turning, the right is red to cross Foothill. So everything is blocked. So yeah, when you get into this traffic stuff, you push here and it goes out there, and there really are no silver bullets. There are some incremental changes you can make there. So certainly I would encourage having more discussions here, and I really appreciate the work that Cedric has done, and probably a new contractor to go out and look at the loops, because I see them too. I see the logics change as I walk across them daily anyway. That is also a very good idea. So again, thank you for talking about it, and I'm pretty sure some very good things will come from it. Thank you.
Any questions of?
No, but I just want to say I really appreciate Jim taking the time to do
The
this.
document, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Cedric?
Expressway.
So I'll go on to the County Expressway 2040 plan. I know some of your members of the commission attended the PAB meeting last week, so I will recap briefly what was discussed there, and I'll give you information regarding the next steps of the County Expressway plan. And I'll go into the county's coordination system on Foothill Expressway and all their expressways, actually. So on 221 was your PAB meeting for Oregon, Foothill, and Page Mill. Other expressways had their PAB meetings earlier in the month, and South County, Gilroy, and Morgan Hill will have theirs in the next couple of weeks. The county is currently compiling all the data from all the PABs, which will be presented at their next policy advisory board meeting, which will be late March. I should probably give you the schedule. Mess it up. Yeah, I should. The next steps for the county. Well, actually, let me go over some of the data that was given out at the policy advisory board meeting. The county is currently working. They have projections for 2013 or data for 2013 regarding level of service. Right now, the segment on Foothill between El Monte and San Antonio is level of service F. So segment analysis is that was one function of their analysis. The intersection, as you know, is LOSF. The county is working on projections for 2025 and 2040, which will be presented to both the technical working group, which I'm a part of, and the policy advisory board. The majority of Foothill Expressway is level of service C right now. However, I brought up the condition for Foothill between Springer and El Monte. I often see that backed up. So I questioned why is it level service C. I think it should probably be level service D. So they're going to reevaluate that. In addition to looking at level of service, they looked at travel time. So they literally get in a car, they drive up and down the expressway, and they compare that to an idealized travel time if there was no traffic. So, and they looked at the peak times for the morning and afternoon. northbound AM peak, if you were to travel at posted speed, it would take you 9 minutes and 33 seconds. But in actuality, it took them 14 minutes, 29 seconds. For southbound peak time, if you travel at the posted speed limit, it's 9 minutes, 33 seconds. In the PM peak, actual travel time is 20 minutes, 45 seconds throughout the whole,
Takes twice as much time.
yeah, throughout the whole foothill corridor.
When you say the foothill corridor, what, is that from
Palo Alto down to.
Arastradero?
Yeah,
Page Mill.
From Page Mill or
Yeah.
Arastradero?
from Page Mill to Homestead.
So where it changes to the Unip or Sarah?
Yeah, from all the way down to Homestead, or past Homestead by the 280 overpass. Since they're still refining 2025 and 2040, I can't report any findings yet. I mentioned to you regarding the Springer Magdalena foothill characteristics and how it took them 6 minutes to get from Barry through Foothill Expressway, and the gap of cars creating the jam at the intersection. Let's see. So the county recognizes the need to facilitate traffic through Foothill, which eventually would help the cross streets. For the commissioners who went to the PAB meeting and the open house, there's mention and thought of expanding Foothill Expressway to 3 lanes each direction between El Monte and San Antonio. That would help remove the bottleneck at El Monte, but we would also have to consider making El Monte again 2 lanes to get the capacity through the intersection. Another issue that the county has brought up to staff is for northbound left turn El Monte onto Foothill. Right now, as you know, it's 2 lanes, double left. They're considering a triple left because they want to encourage the left turn to San Antonio movement to discourage going through El Monte. So to accommodate that, they're considering making it a triple left.
Where do they want to put the triple left?
Northbound El Monte, left turn to Foothill Expressway. Right now it's a double left.
There's 2 lanes that turn left.
Yeah, but
one that
you know
goes
what
off.
happens
280
when we take
Yeah.
El Monte
left,
to left turn on Foothill.
and it slows down because the extreme left lane is now trying to merge
Yeah.
on
So
the right to San Antonio.
One thing that Caltrans has worked on when we have triple lefts and they know that there's a demand for the next immediate cross street is they identify what lane you should be in for that particular movement. So one example is at Stevens Creek in 85. They have, if you're taking 85, you're in this lane. If you're taking Stevens Creek, you're in this lane, and so
Got
on
it.
and so forth. So
Okay.
if I asked the county, if you were to consider that, please, in your model, identify cars should be assigned to this lane, this lane, this lane, depending on where they want to go.
Is it possible to put that in now with just the 2 lanes? I mean, if we're,
They would need more room. So they would have to remove the pork chop island to get that done.
And that would be a delightful thought.
So any suggestion that county staff or city staff has, if it's in their capacity, they'll do the study. So this is one study I've asked them to take a look at.
So, Cedric, but it seems to me that, I mean, you gave us some stats on the travel time during regular, non-peak and peak hours. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think ultimately the way to address some of the cross-traffic issue at El Monte, at Foothill, El Monte, at Maine, at Edith, I probably is in San Antonio, is through better light coordination, but it also probably means that at peak and even non-peak hours, it's going to take longer to travel Foothill Expressway, so that the volume of cars that are coming onto and off of those cross streets can be accommodated. And that in a sense runs counter to what I think the county views as their charter, which is to make Foothill Expressway move quicker. that moving quicker actually works to the detriment of Los Altos. And I remind all of us that 7 of the 11 signalized intersections on Foothill Expressway are in Los Altos. So most of Foothill and most of the signals are affecting Los Altos, nobody else, and none of the other towns. So is that a trade-off that they're going to be willing to
Well,
make?
they do realize that the impacts of operations of the expressway impact our city. Therefore, why they're considering expanding Foothill Expressway in that segment, because right now it's a capacity issue to declog the intersection. And that's one thing they are considering right now as part of their plan. My concern is actually also, we all know El Monte Foothill is an issue, and at least the county has, designs on how to make it better. I'm concerned about Magdalena and Foothill, actually, because that's E right now, and that could be the next one we have to really consider. Right now, the vehicle phasing there is 6 phases. Ideally, you want to have protected lefts, so you require 8 phases. So I'm in their ear about possibly expanding the pedestrian or the vehicle phases there to make it a better operation. But then to get that, we have to downstream. We need more space for turn pockets. We need coordination with the signal next to it, and then we have to consider Berry Avenue. How do we better make that coordinated with the signals?
Yeah.
I think if Los Altos residents were made aware of not only the traffic problem, which of course they probably don't need to be made aware of, but that these are the solutions that are being worked on, then the acceptance, I know it sounds probably weird to you as a traffic engineer, but the acceptance of additional signals would probably be less of a problem. I think John's comment about, people get upset when somehow their beloved village or the town of Los Altos is adding traffic signals, it causes a little bit of hysteria because somehow the town is getting too big or too busy. But the traffic problems are not going to slow down. And so in somehow publicizing the fact, and I don't know what your mechanism for doing that would be, but I think letting people know that this is being worked on, this is a consideration, this coordination between the Foothill Expressway and how the expressway itself is really controlled by the county's objectives of moving traffic along the expressway and how that impacts Los Altos, and John's point about most of the signals in the expressway in fact do affect Los Altos. I think that'd be really important for people to understand. And then the acceptance of adding things like traffic signals down further into Los Altos, like at Berry, would become less of an issue.
Easier to take.
Yeah.
So I'm going to add a comment that I said at the county meeting, which I understand the desire to expand the number of lanes turning from El Monte, northbound El Monte to northbound Foothill Expressway. I am more concerned with traffic getting out of Los Altos than I am in encouraging traffic on 280 to use San Antonio Road as a cut-through. And I appreciate that might reduce some of the traffic going on El Monte, but Los Altos has become, and San Antonio Road is becoming the preferred superhighway for people who want to avoid 85. And adding that additional lane on El Monte will just make San Antonio Road the preferred cut-through. And, Palo Alto for years had a strategy of not widening their streets and making it difficult to get cross town. And as somebody who's sometimes had to get cross town in Palo Alto, I would curse. But the reality is they're right. You widen the street and all you do is encourage more people to use your city streets as a cut-through. So I guess I'm not really in favor of 3 lanes for whatever it's worth. I'm not in favor of 3 lanes on El Monte going to Foothill. because all it's going to do is encourage more cars to get off at El Monte, off of 280. My 2 cents worth.
Yeah, but you have to think of it like what was said earlier, like Almonte initially was treated so you could cut the traffic down, but now the resident, one of our planner, is complaining about it. So I think it's, unfortunately, you fix one, it will affect the other.
But speaking of fix, if the county, if when you evaluate an intersection and you say to the county, you've given it a C and I think it really should be an E, what happens if an intersection is given an E or an F? I mean,
It has to take the course over.
I was going to say, what does that trigger?
So the
And in what time frame?
So the county has certain LOS standards that, like the city does, LOSD or LOSE for CMP intersections. If it falls below those thresholds, then they're required to make mitigations to address those. But if it's above those boundaries, then they will make adjustments to help improve the LOS. But mitigations typically aren't going to be required.
And it goes on a long list of intersections needing mitigation when it gets to that, I mean, that's their workload. isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, just to switch gears a little bit, the other thing that was mentioned at the public meeting was that Foothill is a major bicycle vehicle or bicycle travel path. And especially like at El Monte to San Antonio, if they take out a road, it gives the bicyclists nowhere to go. And so they've got to think about, it's not just widening it to let cars through, but there's a lot of bike traffic that comes through there. And I know El Monte, or not El Monte, Magdalena and Springer, is that right? Right near Andronicos
Yes.
and the church.
Yes.
Same thing. There's, as a bicyclist, there are cars coming on and off Foothill with nowhere to go and how to go. And if something, if the county can think about doing something there, it would be helpful for the bicyclists because
Did the county elaborate on their policies on the expressways?
They were going to talk. They were going to have a meeting, I think, in 6 months that they were going to talk specifically about the pedestrian and bikes.
So the county's bicycle consultant is going to visit the BPAC on their meeting in June, just for information. But the county's policy on all their expressways is a delineate but do not designate policy. They understand that the expressways are a vital bike transportation vehicle, but they feel should only be used for, or should expert users or more advanced users should be the ones using expressways. Their concern is if they mark it as a traditional bike lane with the bike legends and the bike signs, it may feel to the 8 or 10-year-old, I could go on the expressway. So they have concerns about that. And that's why they mark it in a way where it looks like a bike lane, but they don't technically mark it as a bike lane.
I could be wrong, but I think our bicycle transportation plan for, I think Covington School uses El Monte, or not El Monte, Foothill as a way to get to school.
But I think that in our town, I think there is a general feeling that you should be able to use your bicycle to get around. And we want to encourage that because it reduces other kinds of vehicular traffic. And so when you talk to the county, since that's not a priority, we depend on you when you go to the county to advocate for that part because our town is changing and
Well,
the things that can make it better.
Yeah, but
Riding a bicycle on the expressway is,
Suicidal.
it doesn't matter how many people want to ride bikes in Los Altos or how important that is. The expressway is a really dangerous place to ride
Oh,
bicycles.
But that's why it's an expert,
But I think-
advanced rider.
But also, I think
You can't let kids ride bicycles.
I understand that, but I think crossing Foothill
Right.
and understanding that bicycle traffic from our town is bifurcated, and if you need to get from one side across Foothill,
That's a different problem.
Well,
than
that's-
what Mike is talking about.
well,
Well,
I
but there
I'm
are side
paralleling.
roads. The thing is, the nice about Los Altos is there are side roads, frontage roads up and down Foothill. So for the
Well,
students,
not-
they can use.
yeah, but what Mike,
Not between Edith and Arrastradero. You're stuck.
Well, Edith and Rastero isn't part of Los Altos.
yeah, but what Mike has been saying is between Almonte and San Antonio, and that little section is
Yeah,
dangerous
exactly.
in itself. I mean, I take a right all the time, and I'm always worried I'm going to hit somebody flying down. So I wouldn't be comfortable if it's designated, because I do agree. I mean, I as a parent also look, oh, that's the designated thing. Oh yeah, you can ride on it. So you got to be very careful.
Yeah.
That's
On the San Antonio, I think one of the problems that we're going to increasingly face in San Antonio, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with your traffic study, and you're going to have to live with it, is that with what's happening in Mountain View on with Safeway and what's going to be built there in the future, what's happening on the bowling alley in Palo Alto, San Antonio is the arterial from 280 to those centers, and that's not going to get any better. So, so you have two choices. Do you leave San Antonio as it is, hoping to discourage people to go to those areas in another way? I don't think so. I mean, because the alternatives are horrible. Or do you face the problem and do to San Antonio and to Foothill, as you're suggesting, making it into 3 lanes a turn to accommodate what is an inevitable traffic problem?
And my answer is, you don't make it easier for people.
But where would they go?
Because all it's going
Well,
to do.
what do they
Because
do?
all it's going to do is encourage more cars. It will never make the traffic less.
But how will those,
I don't think the lanes are.
what's the alternative route?
Cars, the development.
They'll figure it out. I mean, it's not.
But that means
it's
going
not-
through the
it's-
arterial.
You assume that it's our responsibility to solve the problem for the construction that's happening along El Camino.
I don't, it's
And-
not our, but no, but it is our problem,
I don't
like
think
it
it's
or
the
not.
construction. I think the development is going to increase traffic, and we need to find a way to manage it.
Yeah.
We're not creating traffic. The traffic is being created by the new
But-
development.
But you assume by adding lanes that you solve the problem. And
We're
I-
managing the problem.
And if you look at the history, it doesn't manage the problem. All it does is encourage more cars to use that road. And it's a fallacy.
But what are the alternatives?
Where are
If
they?
the
how are
alternative
they-
is to
straight
keep
down-
two lanes, and cars who get frustrated
Go to El
will
Monte?
will find another way.
What other way?
They'll take 85, they'll take Page Mill Road.
You can't take 85.
How can you take 85 to
85 is
get to-
Bumper to bumper.
How can you take 85 to get to,
John,
The San
to
Antonio
San
development.
Antonio and El Camino?
you know, there's an interesting.
They're not gonna do that.
There's an interesting example of this between Menlo Park and Palo Alto when they worked on the intersection of Junipero Serra, Sand Hill, and Alpine, whatever. There's like 11 roads that come in Santa Cruz, throw in a few more roads. And Stanford refused to mess around with that intersection. The bridge, there were 2 bridges that were too narrow. One was on Stanford property, one was part of Menlo Park. Menlo Park refused to widen its bridge for exactly the reasons you said. It went on and on for years. Sand Hill became a total nightmare. That intersection was ridiculous. And finally, Menlo Park and Stanford finally agreed. I forget what there was some, Stanford got to fix the golf course or something. I forget what the issue was. But they fixed the 2 bridges, they fixed that intersection, and it's actually not bad.
It's
No,
really
not bad
good.
at all.
And it has made a huge difference. And the traffic, believe me, the traffic was there before, it is there now. The traffic didn't get any better, that's for sure.
But it's moving.
But at least it moves now. It was just horrible before.
If we bury
Well, I
our
think
heads in the sand
that's Ronit's
over
point.
what's happening
is
there,
you
we're
have-
going to be...
If it's inevitability and you manage it,
At least we're
that's
managing
different
it.
than saying, we're not going to deal with it at all. But,
And we do want people to come to downtown.
well, yeah.
We are trying to encourage them to come, and then we are discouraging them not to come.
But the problem, the traffic at the peak hours, which is what we're talking about, is not traffic that's coming to downtown. It's traffic that is merely crossing our town.
That's right.
It's providing zero economic benefit to Los Altos, and as a matter of fact, that traffic is and will continue to constrain the growth within Los Altos because of the gridlock.
But we
that we're
can't make
trying to
it
get.
Well, we never know, because
So,
if
but-
people
but
are,
widening El Monte to make it 3 lanes will just increase the amount of traffic
But
It won't decrease the amount of traffic.
But I just can imagine if I'm working in Mountain View and I'm cutting through, and if I have to get some groceries on the way, I'm going to be very happy to bypass the Mountain View Safeway because of the parking issue and get into Los Altos Safeway and get out if I need to. But, I mean, we can go in circles. The question is, it will happen. Nobody's going to go to 85 and nobody's going to go to Page Mill.
And that
We
this
just
is the
have
only
Almonte
alternative.
and San
It's the
Antonio.
main arterial. We can't escape the inevitable. Do we have to like it? No. Probably not. Is there anything we can do about it? What do we can't throw stones at Mountain View. They're making their own
Yes, we
rules.
can.
Well, no, we can't.
Well, good.
I know a lot of the city council people, but
I
still,
think
we have to deal with
we
what
have
the
to let-
situation. We're real.
And let them, I mean, they're doing all the studies, so they're going to come back with.
I think that's a great alternative.
Well, the development patterns we're seeing in Mountain View and Palo Alto, these projects that we're talking about, which are having such an impact on school enrollment and infrastructure, but as housing, I mean, they have more of a benefit of having those people visit our downtown than office. Plus, it's an opposite commute pattern. If you're living in the San Antonio Shopping Center, for example, you're either going to go north on San Antonio to try to get to 101, or if you head south to get to 280, that's the opposite commute pattern. So that's actually not as much. But what we have coming in the near future is Phase 2 of San Antonio, which includes about 130,000 square feet of office. So
And a
that
hotel.
Right, but those have
And
different
cinema.
traffic patterns. The office will have a direct impact on what we're talking about tonight. Is
Well, what
commute-
about the apartments that's going to go where the on San Antonio, across the street from Safeway?
Right.
I mean, that's all going to be developed. That's
But that's what I'm saying. The residential almost has an
going to be
opposite.
residential, right?
But
but
it has
it's
an opposite
But it has
commute
an opposite,
pattern.
yeah.
And it'll have people that'll be in, the
Correct.
vicinity on weekends and after
Correct,
work.
correct.
Whereas it's going to be this office redevelopment that's occurring there that's going to have a direct impact, particularly on San Antonio Road.
Right, and I have no interest in doing anything to help alleviate that problem.
With
I-
that said, I have a question about pedestrians crossing San Antonio Road, because regardless of whether they're 2 lanes or 2, there's going to be a lot more traffic on San Antonio. And this has been sort of my philosophical approach to the town, is our town is divided by major streets in a way that doesn't encourage people to come into town. And I was hoping that when we did our Civic Center redo, that we would make a really concerted effort to think about how to make it easier for people to cross San Antonio from your neighborhood, from my neighborhood.
The flashing lights work really
The
well.
flashing lights,
were great.
I love
I think that's a wonderful innovation, but I'm not sure that that will be enough at a certain point. So I'm just bringing this up as something
Why
else
do you
to think
think
of. I just think that if we have bumper-to-bumper traffic going along on multi-lanes on San Antonio is going to turn into a sort of a mini highway, and it does say, flashing lights, traffic may not stop, and I think traffic may not stop. I mean, we have a lovely small-town feel, but it's going to be hard if we have the full brunt of what's being developed on El Camino and San Antonio heading up our way. So I just,
You know, the
something
funny-
else to put in your plate.
Well, I,
The cartoon which came in my mind was as soon as you press that button, you get big barriers which come up and then you cross the street. But really don't see that.
I think the flashing lights are fantastic. That was a
Oh, yeah, it's great.
It's a wonderful quality of life.
And it works
thing.
really fast. You don't have to wait.
I think between that and the flowering plum trees that are out now, I think our previous city manager did some pretty good work.
And in addition to the flashing lights, which I agree, they're working very well, but what I think Phoebe's referring to is part of the master plan. You know, we're not moving forward with the complete master plan. It was a little bit too ambitious, so we're doing a scaled-back plan that focuses on replacing Hillview with a new community center in that vicinity, and then doing future planning to make sure that circulation and parking and everything will still work. But we are hoping to retain the intersection designs that we did out here. And they were really more aesthetic, but physically they shortened the crossing and they made it more direct so you don't have to go from one island to another to another. And they just make it a more comfortable intersection because that is a very highly used route. I know all of the east-west streets are used to get downtown, but particularly the Edith neighborhood through City Hall and then over to Main Street is very highly used.
And with Abby's Hotel closing off what was a further upstream cut-through, now there's even more traffic going right there at that five-star intersection, where you don't, if you're not from this town, you don't know where to go when the lights go there. I've
I
seen
know.
people sort of like go, whoa.
So what's going to happen 10 years from now when we having, I know studies that are
Underground
going on now
expressway.
when we're having, and it's, I don't think we're very far away from having cars where you won't have to,
We're not driving.
we're not driving. I mean, that's coming. It's coming fast.
Cedric doesn't need to worry about that. He's
I've been a
got-
part of those discussions, but it's not my immediate concern right now. But just to jump on the San Antonio conversation real fast, I'm working with Palo Alto, Mountain View, and the county on putting in new equipment along San Antonio to provide better coordination. So in hopes when things get further developed in Mountain View, the signals in Los Altos can better handle those. So I've been working on for about a year already on that with those
Mean
other
to
agencies.
synchronize them better?
Yeah.
We need an
It'll
underground.
also future-proof, hopefully, our signals for any influx of traffic.
Will that help the Portola intersection? I know
Yeah.
Will-
that's a major.
Will that help the is Mountain View going to do anything? Because Mountain View, if you make it through the El Monte intersection, inevitably you get caught either at the light for the village at Carmel or at California.
Yeah, so all of San Antonio through Los Altos and Mountain View is being...
It's going to
Yeah,
coordinate. Great.
yeah. So we had an assessment of our capabilities for Los Altos, Mountain View, and Palo Alto. We had to find a medium where all the signals can talk to each other, so we're going to do it through GPS.
Great idea.
It's a great idea.
So let me finish off the what's happening next with County Expressways. So you have the football field looking schedule in front of you.
Yes.
Right now, we just finished the small PAB groups, which is you see it's under January. The county is eliminating our technical working group 3, and we're focusing on technical working group 4. The outreach consultant is going to be working on a web telephone survey. I don't have the details for that, unfortunately. When I do, I can certainly update your commission on that. And the next steps would be the technical working group 4 and the policy advisory board meeting 2. So what's going to happen is the county is going to update all they've heard from all their open houses and any community meetings that they have already planned, report it back to the technical working group and the policy advisory board, and they're going to have a preliminary project list based on what they've heard so far. And then they want input from the staff and the policy advisory. Did we capture all that we know that are concerns, or are there anything additional? What I can tell you right now is I'm working with Palo Alto, the Hills, and Cupertino regarding a foothill-focused meeting only, a more in-depth meeting where we can roll up our sleeves and talk about issues pertaining to different parts of Foothill and maybe talk about possible solutions. So the county has done similar meetings with South San Jose already. So we would be the next jurisdiction to do something similar. So I'm working with the county on that now, and we're looking towards late April for that meeting. I'm trying to plan it far enough in advance where I can revisit your commission again to talk about Foothill more in depth, and also the BPAC. So I'm trying to make sure I have enough time to prepare for both of your commissions to jog your mind about what issues you want to be addressed to the county, and what issues your PAB members should be advocating for.
And Cedric, on those
Yes.
meetings, so Loyola Corners comes to mind, the Loyola Bridge, I raised that comment up, and in fact, thank you, James, for sending the PDF of what the bridge was going to look like, and because it gave us a chance to respond back. But how does I know that they had a meeting on the other side in the unincorporated part of the county, but nobody's talked to the rest of Los Altos about, here's this bridge that's going to go in, it's going to have major, not major, but it'll have major issues with some of the residents in Los Altos as well, but we don't seem to be getting notification or what's happening, except that it's in process, going to happen, and
Well, I do know right now they're finalizing the bid package in hopes to start construction in the summertime. I'm not privy to how they coordinated their outreach for that. So
But is that part of the expressway process, or is that a separate, I know that they mentioned it in part
yeah,
of
so
something that's...
the Loyola Bridge project was identified back in 2003 as part of the original expressway plan project. So that particular project was identified then and is being addressed and designed. So in that case, yes, it was identified way back in 2003. For this update, they will let us know what has been done already, what is in progress, and what additional projects will be listed so that when funding becomes available, whatever's close to the top will rise and get that funding.
Right. And I guess my question is for us in Los Altos, like A Street, which has no way to really safely have a bike or pedestrian walk it. I mean, something's got to be done. And when the county now adds another lane and makes the bridge wider, it just seems like it's only encouraging a choke point, which is A Street, and maybe we should be proactive so that we're coordinating our work, that whatever we plan to do, or at least have it pretty much ready to go. I mean, it's just a comment. I haven't heard anybody talk about A Street at all.
You familiar with that project?
The downtown design project, I mean, the Loyola. One of the biggest changes, most of the Loyola project, and it's unscheduled, it's not pending, but it was mostly streetscape improvements, delineating sidewalks versus parking lots, street versus pedestrian corridors, trees. It was really more of a economic development beautification project, but it did suggest turning A Street into a one-way, and all of the schemes work with the new widened county bridge, but it will drastically change circulation patterns. So I think before the city does consider scheduling that project, we need to look pretty carefully at the circulation effects that would have. The benefit of doing A Street one way is you get sidewalks on each side and bike lanes on each side, and then those bike lanes tie into, and bike paths, and they tie into the bike lanes on Miramonte.
Exactly. I mean, I'm all for doing exactly what you're talking about.
But it really affects circulation. We have to look at that carefully before we just move forward with that.
I agree, and it seems like A Street and Miramonte would have a traffic light or something, so you can kind of signal people when they come up to Miramonte, they're not having to stop there, but they can actually get through that intersection and kind of clear that out. And just like you're saying, it's a big roundabout, essentially.
And there was a traffic study done, it was years ago, that looked at those movements and didn't feel that there would be a real negative impact, but I think we want to look at that a second time.
I'm sure.
So James, if that's being considered, is there a way to temper without making permanent changes, try it for a month? Is that a feasible thing? You're proposing something that, as we've seen, traffic can have unintended consequences. And it seems to me if there's some way to set that up as a month-long trial to see what happens. I mean, I know it's not elegant when you do it that way, but that might be something to look at.
That'd be a perfect candidate for that. I mean, we already have the traffic study. We know what the counts and the movements are going to be, but that would be a perfect follow-up. Just put temporary barriers out there and see what the reaction is over a period of 4 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I drive that intersection a lot. I actually go the roundabout way. It's faster sometimes not to make the right, to wait for the light. You go up to the light, make the right before the other one turns green, and then you make the left over across the bridge. So you're essentially, it's the right movement. It's doable.
What happened with that project, and I thought it was a good project and it was moving forward to be scheduled several years ago, but when we went out and met with the property owners and the business owners, because of the irregular parking patterns and the whole district is underparked, it doesn't have as much parking as it should have just because of how it developed historically, but a lot of those little office buildings, their parking is actually sticking out into the public right-of-way. So if you put a sidewalk in there, a little office building that has 6 parking spaces, they could lose all 6 of them. So the reaction to that was there wasn't a lot of support for the plan.
Yeah, but along Miramonte, that's a major student travel zone, and there is no sidewalk, and the shoulder is horrible on A Street.
In fact, we were just talking recently with property owners out there about the idea of maybe sort of salvaging the project and making it a Fremont, Miramonte, A Street project, and then just don't go interior to those little office buildings.
I would strongly recommend that, because I think that's the issue. I mean, as anybody's biked or as you drive down Miramonte, it gets even worse. but at least if we can make that intersection better. I think there's a dry cleaner or something in that corner that they kind of, there's no sidewalk between A Street and whatever the first street is behind Bicycle Outfitters. But if there was some sidewalk there, it'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll talk about resurrecting that project.
Yeah, it's great.
And then my last piece of information I want to inform you is regarding how the coordination timing works on Foothill Expressway. So they have an adaptive, demand-driven coordination system on Foothill Expressway. It's called NASTEC ATMS now. It's a very widely used traffic system in the industry. I've used it myself in a different agency where I worked at. So the traffic cameras that you see along the expressway, they're merely there to collect data. They're not vehicle detection cameras, and they're there to also conduct traffic monitoring. They have a traffic operations center at the county offices where they have live people actually monitoring all the expressways.
Straight to the NSA.
The way they detect vehicles is through traditional traffic loops, and that's their preferred method to detect traffic. They're also implementing a microwave detection for bikes and pedestrians. So they have a couple locations, not on Foothill itself, but throughout the county that they're testing it out. And once they feel satisfied with those devices, they'll roll them out through the other expressways. You may see pan, tilt, zoom cameras at the intersections. Those are also just for traffic monitoring. I'm not sure if they record the video, but if they do, they have off-site servers to collect that data, and they keep it for a period of time based on the rules of government. Again, I mentioned regarding the coordination type, it's not specific to a time of day. If there's the volume thresholds met, the coordination plan kicks in, and if there's an adjacent city intersect or signal that's coordinated, that will kick in as well. They have 20-plus plans per intersection, so they have, I think, 200 intersections. So they manage that many traffic signal timing patterns. And as I mentioned, El Monte is the controlling factor on Foothill Expressway. The next controlling intersection is actually Magdalena. So outside of those two, it's typically about 80-second cycle at those intersections. And they according to the county, it toggles between which is controlling between El Monte and Magdalena. The other intersections are about half that signal timing cycle.
Cedric, I've got a question for you. If at some point when the city does an upgrade, if the city upgrades at our major intersections, and I'm talking the major intersections that intersect with Foothill, would we have the opportunity, assuming the county was willing, to do more of a demand coordination between the traffic on San Antonio, El Monte, and what's going on Foothill, so that it was a more interactive system? Does that kind of system exist that we could put in?
Yeah, so at San Antonio Foothill, we have, even though we do have coordination right now there, the way we coordinate is an older method. We have a CIP right now to upgrade our traffic control system there, where the equipment will match the counties through fiber optic connections and the latest traffic signal equipment. So we're going to match the same brand as they have and implement the same software. So as soon as we become online, we connect right away. So the same characteristics and patterns will be implemented right away. And if we ever get a chance to connect through fiber down San Antonio or Grant or any other streets, I'll make sure the equipment we put in will match the county so that we're all connected.
Okay.
My background in traffic signals, especially when I worked in the city of Livermore, we had 115 traffic signals, all joined by fiber optics and the latest switching equipment and traffic signal equipment, and we built our own traffic signal operations center. So I'm very familiar with the equipment, and I'm very comfortable in operating it and building it.
And where have you been for the last 10 years?
Yeah.
Why weren't you here 10 years ago?
He was working.
He was in Livermore.
The weather's much
fiber
better
optics.
here.
You know, essentially, we need coordination from 101 to 280. No, I'm serious. It has to be, it essentially needs to be coordinated all the way up San Antonio from 101, across the expressway, up El Monte to 280.
And that's,
Because people
But
do
that's
that.
exactly what he's
That's what he's
doing.
saying.
He's saying that the
Yeah,
city's
so-
And
coordinating.
I'm kind of agreeing with him that, I mean, this is,
Nice of you.
it's, you know, it has to be much more global than we got some intersection that it's a
Exactly.
problem.
So that part of that project is it's called the PASS grant, which is where the Metropolitan Transportation Commission makes available consultants to help agencies who don't have the time to actually do that kind of work develop the timing, identify equipment needed to do that, and then basically they give us the product. We sign off or we make adjustments as necessary. And they procure all the equipment, they install it. We're out there when they install it. We troubleshoot, and during the peak times, we're out there actually doing the travel time runs and everything like that. And we tweak the coordination timing as needed. And then we had the timing plans, and now we're able to coordinate through the GPS. So if I make a change to one intersection, all the downstream intersections will follow suit.
Wow.
Cool.
You know, it's interesting that the county is considering this. If you look at Oregon Expressway, the intersection with El Camino going southbound is just, in the morning, is just outrageous. I mean, it backs up well down the expressway. I mean, I just don't even go down there. I mean, it's way worse than our San Antonio.
Yeah, I've seen the phasing in Palo Alto where they intersect with El Camino or the other expressways, and they have a phasing called overlaps, where it's the most complicated intersection we have is over here at San Antonio, and we have overlaps there. But a traditional intersection has 8 phases. They may have 36 phases.
Jeez.
And, I talk to my counterpart there all the time, and he's pulling his hair out because there's 36 phases to manage. So they have to have super elaborate, timing plans and schemes to try and get everything flowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you through with your summary?
Yes.
Thank you
Any
very
other
much.
questions of,
Great job, Cedric.
Yeah, thank you.
unbelievable, I'm so glad we had this.
Yeah.
I learned more today about traffic in Los Altos than I ever knew.
In your retirement, you can become a traffic engineer.
I'm not qualified.
Thank you so much.
Okay, what is next on this item? Any commissioner reports and comments? Oh, by the way, yeah.
That one, well, I have a question.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
You
the
want to do your
commission,
question before I report?
You can do your report, and then I'll.
No,
I was
go ahead.
trying to give it to you, but
No,
but he
go
was
ahead,
looking at me.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to be at the March 11th meeting, and on the agenda is the 427 First Street project that council's going to be talking about. I was trying to remember if there anything specific that anybody here had a concern about. I mean, I think we commented on.
Well, I had a concern about the cut-through traffic on
Yeah.
West Drive.
Yeah, I got that.
So,
But I think that the project we approved, I was just, on the top of my head, I was trying to think of what issues there were.
Honestly, I would look up the meeting minutes.
That's what I'm gonna
I just
do.
don't even remember much.
Were you at the last?
I was listening to it via the web.
Okay.
And they had the
Cedric.
Oak Avenue School, the preschool.
Oh, yes.
Which came in front of them, and it got approved with a little bit of a change on Wednesday timing. They did, but everything was okay there. But the interesting one, and I know last time David said that we can't show anything on the screen, but if it's something which is posted on our, like the city council video is posted online, is that something we can still look up here, or? The interesting thing was that it was not on the agenda, and Ron Packard came up and talked about the parking in downtown. And he basically has said, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if I know you were in the background in the video, but he said that he's actually willing to, as a business owner, who's probably number one property owner in downtown right now, is willing to put in his own money for the parking structure.
Towards a garage.
Yeah, and he was encouraging other business owners to come and do so. And he said that it would not be passed on to his tenants or the city.
Oh, well,
And I thought, considering we just had such a long discussion on that, it was pretty interesting. And it's just like 3 minutes, but I would highly encourage you all should listen. I was very amazed about that.
And that's been a theme. We've been meeting with the Village Association, the Chamber, Government Affairs, just like we did with the Planning Commission about the parking management and what the next steps are. And as you know, Council's priority this year is to get a parking structure underway. And one piece of that discussion is, because typically parking garages are built through either redevelopment funds or assessment districts. They're not typically paid for with general resident, tax dollars. So that's going to be a big discussion. Should there, is the expectation that the city will contribute to a parking garage so long as there's also a property owner contribution? So these other groups have been talking about that same thing, and there is a significant number of people who agree that that is a fair way to approach a parking structure, and that was the point that Ron Packard was making. He was representing really the Chamber and Village Association groups that, yes, there should be a contribution, whatever that percentage is or that sum is.
Okay.
That was
Any other
basically it.
discussion items?
Yeah, so there was an item that came up at the council study session. They had a discussion about changing the commission handbook, and specifically the issue of commissioners taking meetings telephonically. And there was a poll of the council, and 3 were in favor of allowing commissioners to take it telephonically, and 1 was on the fence, and the mayor was vehemently against it, and it was defeated.
But it's going to come up on the next March 11th meeting.
It's on the
So by
consent
the
calendar.
way, 3 is bigger than 2, but
It's getting there.
it was defeated.
And actually, they decided that city council members should not do it either.
Exactly.
But the reason that seemed to take the day was that the technology is not good enough to make it viable. And I have my doubts about that, because if perhaps the one that had been proposed was not good enough and telephone is not good enough, I cannot believe that we are in the heart of Silicon Valley, where people do teleconferencing all the time, internationally and locally, that there isn't an available technology. And so I'm thinking that I might come and sit with Mike and make my public comment at that time, because even if, as a policy, the city says that meetings should always be face-to-face, and I appreciate we all give up our time, no one's paying us the big bucks to be here, I still feel like it behooves the city to make it as easy as possible for people to participate. I think it's a good thing. And in my opinion, if the technology is not good enough now, it will be, and I think it would be a good thing for the city to explore, as we have often said on a variety of issues, proactively. If council ever decides that this is something that or another council decides that it's a good thing, I think it would be smart for the city to have done the research and say, if we're going to do it, this is the way we should do it. And I can't believe that between Cisco and
It
many other
exists.
of our local...
All of them use it.
Phoebe, I've actually had a conversation with a former colleague and friend, both in FaceTime, from Japan and from the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, and having perfect reception from our iPhones. I've also done a Lockheed acceptance test on a very critical piece of hardware up in Portland from Palo Alto using FaceTime. I mean, not allowing someone to take a meeting using a FaceTime kind of
Well, that's what I'm
technology is
saying.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
but there's
I think-
GoToMeeting. I mean, it's something we
I
always
actually,
use.
just this week, with a designer in Southern California for a property that we have, we did a whole design review via Skype
Yeah.
with a PowerPoint presentation. She showed us the materials and the only difference is she actually did ship to us the hard materials. So
Yeah, but
we were able to
go to-
look at them, and that was important.
Most
I
of our
argued
clients
all
are,
of it.
yeah,
You
but
can't do
most
that.
of our
Well,
clients are traveling, and we use GoToMeeting, and we can see at their screen, they can see ours, we can see each other, and
Well, my point is, I believe that if you go with a statistical sampling of 2, and it was unsuccessful. Those two people may very well say it didn't work for me, but I believe, in my opinion, there is a much wider acceptance of this particular technology because it does work in the preponderance of the time. It's not perfect, but I think it's enough of a thing that I am certainly willing to go and talk again as a interested citizen to suggest that the city proactively look into. We did this big technology upgrade here. We went from that slideshow for our city website to a much better one, and I see this as just another facet of our town being up to date. And so I was pretty upset.
Well, for the record, I wrote a letter to the city council, and I rebutted all of their reasons why we shouldn't do it, and I thought pretty logically, and I don't know how, honestly, they came to the conclusion that they did. I really don't. I mean, I was surprised, and I included the fact that one of the things I said is I'm on a lot of boards, and hardly ever do I have a board meeting where someone isn't.
Yeah.
But, I mean, on the phone. I mean, it's so
We're in
it's so
Silicon
part of
Valley.
our
Everybody's-
society right now. I mean, we have so much technology that how could you not include it?
Well, you're preaching to the choir here. I think in the dais up here, we're pretty much in agreement that it works for a lot of people. It's too bad that city council doesn't think it will work for us.
Maybe we need a technology tour.
Ooh.
Google and Cisco's right around the corner. Should do
Okay,
a
any
technology
potential
tour.
future items that anybody wants to talk about? Then?
So I guess I have a question for staff, because are we confirming, David, our agenda item on the 20th for the tour? Or are we doing it independent of the meeting? You had mentioned something prior to the meeting about.
Well, I'd like to nail down a date, and certainly March 20th could work, if everybody was available.
I think we were, that's why we put it in, right?
It's on the calendar already as a
For us.
tentative, and so now it appears that we'll, barring disaster, all be there.
Yeah, so that's good. I'm still of the mind that I'm still of the opinion that the format should be a report, and that's distributed beforehand, where you all view properties, and there'll be some subject matter to consider, and then we would convene and discuss the projects and have photos and some resources available, plans, so we could discuss.
So it'd be a self-guided tour first,
Yes.
followed by,
And what time do you plan to do this?
I could be ready to go on the 20th at our next
Are
meeting.
you going to send an email out to all of us? And
So when do you expect
Confirming
us
the
to do
time.
the tour? I guess that's the
Pardon?
question. Is it
how much
before the
lead time
20th?
will we have?
Yes.
The week, the
So
typical,
by next week, we'll have some plans of where you want us to go look at?
Mhm.
Okay.
and the properties that I've identified through our discussions over the last few months and have been 4400 El Camino. That's the multifamily over near Los Altos Avenue. 5100 El Camino, which is another multifamily at Distal and El Camino. There's 396 First Street, which is the newer multifamily on First Street where the animal hospital was. There's 950 San Antonio Road, the mixed-use project there, near Sherwood. There's 343 Second Street, the Packard Foundation, and 240 Third Street, a mixed-use building there downtown by Walgreens. So, and then I was intentionally not thinking of 101st Street, 161st Street, or 400 Main Street, or 1 Main. I just don't think they're far enough along, and we really need to get, I think, some of the streetscape improvements in, sidewalks and landscape, and have the buildings complete before we can really
So,
look at those.
David, we had talked at one point about including some residential properties and having the Design Review Commission participate. Is that still the plan, or is that off the agenda?
I'm not really seeing that working well, but I just think it's a bit complicated to combine those two.
Maybe we can do it as separate.
Well, we have the distinction of Design Review Commission doesn't make or change rules relative to zoning. Those things would happen through PTC.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is that if it's complicated to do it on the same day,
Do it
maybe
separately.
split it, like commercial versus residential. Does that make sense?
Well, I was thinking, why don't we try these 6 buildings or 7 buildings, whatever they were, and see how it works
Yeah.
before we try to include more things.
I mean, my thought was, and I know the intent there was some cross-pollination for various reasons, and my thought was do it this commission-centric, certainly invite the Design Commission to share the information and let them know of it, so if they want to experience it, and then vice versa. Developing one for the Design Commission and then share it with you, and you can participate as you want in that. That was my thought on how to do that, rather than mash it all
I
up.
think that's a good start.
But I welcome your input, and if there's any projects on this list that don't seem interesting to you, or you'd like to add something to it, please let me know now.
David, what
or
about
in
the
near
one
future.
next to Santa Rita School? At that
Pilgrim Haven.
corner?
Pilgrim Haven,
Yeah.
or Terraces?
As it's called now.
Yeah.
I would like to see it.
Terraces.
Is that okay?
Okay.
Yeah, that's another one, though, that's only
It is good.
partially
Only phase
completed.
They haven't phased.
Yeah, but
they
it's
haven't-
enough complete that.
Yeah. It's changed enough where it's,
Have
And
any,
would you be giving us drawings, or because I'm downloading, so would we get PDFs or we get?
I'll be preparing a set of plans for each
Okay.
one's, site plan, some elevations, possibly a floor plan or something.
So you let me know if it's downloadable or I need to pick something up.
Yes, we'll have digital and paper copies.
Awesome.
so.
Perfect.
anything else?
Oh, so I was just going to inform everyone, if they haven't gone down to the south end of town, the Palo Alto Medical Foundation building is now under construction.
Oh, really?
It's been demolished down to the ground at Altus Oaks and is
Cool.
in
I live in that
process.
area, I can tell you, I can hear them.
Well, I did ask at one point for the commission to consider whether construction should not be allowed on Saturdays, and I was not happy with the results. So now that it's all happening around your neighborhoods, I think we might want to reconsider that.
So I'd like to propose in that spirit an agenda item, because it turns out our holidays for construction are different than the city holidays. As I discovered one day when I had somebody doing construction in my neighborhood on President's Day, which is not considered a holiday for construction. So I would like to propose an agenda item to look at and understand what constitutes a holiday for construction.
I have no idea.
I think we should be consistent with what the other cities are doing.
Well,
Well,
there isn't,
it's
there is
not.
inconsistency with
It's not. So I'd like to propose that we agendize it.
Do we want an agenda item, or can't they just send us a
Hey, James.
memo that says, here's what it is?
Well, you can
Yeah,
do
you
that,
can
but we
Need to discuss it.
if we're going to discuss it, we need to
It needs to be on
agendize
the,
it.
we can't
That
discuss
would-
it unless it's on the agenda. Thank you, Jolie.
That would, that would be fine to talk about that, but I would put it in a different context. I wouldn't say that our rules are inconsistent with other cities. We have what are employee legal holidays, and then we have construction hour limits. They're two different things.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my point. They are what constitutes a holiday for the city is different than what constitutes a holiday for construction.
And it wasn't done accidentally, it was done consciously.
I'm not,
Oh, I'm not.
I'm not saying it wasn't done consciously, but I think there's, to me, there's some questions that we might want to look at and understand. Is
Okay.
anybody interested in agendizing that?
I wouldn't mind. I don't think it's going to take all that much time. At
Sure.
least I'll know. Any other items?
And just in case you were thinking of something else, I could see, James, you had something in mind. Well, so much for that.
You know, Jerry, you have to be careful. You've already been charged once for breaking that.
I know, it's so true.
You're going to spend your retirement